Well, that was an amazing panel. There was so much information that was dropped in that last one. And I really want to thank David Boyle from Tire Profiles for not only putting the entire event together, but he really specifically hand-selected everybody who was on that panel. Kara, did you recognize anybody on that last panel?
I sure did. I saw my boss's boss, Chuck Kramer from Foundation Automotive. Love that guy.
Yeah, Chuck did a great job. He had a lot of information, especially on being the very first quick lane in the United States. So I was really humbled to hear all of that. Let's bring back in our master of ceremonies, Mr. Ben Price.
Actually, it's Shrek here. I'm stuck in the swamp, but I'm so excited because I'm going to be watching some of this. I love watching anything because I'm stuck in isolation with Donkey. Oh, come on, Shrek. That's a nasty thing to say, man. We're having so much fun at the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I love this. So much fun. Let's go. Let's watch this now. Come on. 5 minutes, Donkey. Stop it. I'll do it. All right.
Love it. All right. In and out quick. Kara, who do we have coming up next?
Up next, we have Lissette Gole from Google, Warranty Processing Panel, and Brandon Nixon from UpdatePriomise.
Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Gene Girdley along with Ted Ings. And Ted, we have now with us a reigning Best Practice Award winner in Lissette Gole.
That's right, Gene. Lissette Gole is the head of automotive retail at Google and a great friend of the Fixed Ops Roundtable. This is the third Fixed Ops Roundtable with which she is appearing. And Lissette, welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Oh, thank you for having me back, Ted. I'm thrilled to be here with you and the entire audience today.
I tell you, the last event back in September, we learned so much about Google Assistant, and you also appeared on Liza Borges' panel as well, who keynoted earlier this morning. So we're very honored to have you back, and this is a much anticipated segment of today's event. So with that, I know you have a lot of information to give us, so I'm gonna let you take it away, Lissette.
That sounds great. All right, so thank you again for having me back. I'm thrilled to be here today. And I'm really excited to talk to everybody here about parts and service and how you can reach customers through the digital presence and through Google specifically. And it's a really great time to be here because we're going to talk about a lot of data today around what's happening with consumer trends, what's happening in the industry more holistically, how digital can help. And what we will see is that this is a very timely conversation, and it's really going to help us move through the rest of the year and even into the first half of the new year as well. So without further ado, I'm going to just go ahead and dive right in. And what I first want to do is set the stage and look at how many vehicles required service in 2020. So we see that there are about 280 million vehicles currently in operation. And the average age of those vehicles right now is 11.9 years, which is great for this conversation we're having today with the Fixed Ops Roundtable. And when we also look at that information, we see that there's a sweet spot of vehicles that are ready to be serviced. And that sweet spot is around 6 to 12 years that these vehicles have been on the road. And there are 87 million of those vehicles right now on the road that are ready to be serviced in that sweet spot. And this is important because as we look at the course of the next several years between 6 and 12, we know that these vehicles will continue to be in the maintenance cycle for some time. So if we look at what's happening in terms of how they're finding your dealerships, how digital is influencing moving into the service lane, what we see is that nearly 8 in 10 automotive parts and service purchases are influenced right now by digital touch points. Yet, only 1 in 4 purchases are currently involving a dealership. And so when we look at the discrepancy here, 78% influenced by digital, 24% coming to the dealership for our parts and service. There's obviously a big gap. And that gap is not necessarily because customers don't want to come into the dealership for parts and service, but as we will see, it's because we want to make sure that we are using digital to really evangelize your storefront and let customers know that you have the parts and service that they're looking for. Now, as this is a tires dedicated roundtable, I want to specifically look at tires and also what's happening in the battery space. So if we see that trend happening overall with 24% of shoppers coming in to the dealership, what we see is a little bit of a different mix when we look at tires and batteries. So for tires specifically, 82% of shoppers are influenced by digital right now. 32% of tire purchasers are purchasing those at a dealership today. For batteries, it's 87% that are being influenced by digital and 34% that are purchasing in a dealership. So it's a little bit higher than the average, but we still see that we have room to grow to bring more people into the service lane. And this is no surprise to everybody on the call today, but we know that parts and service drive profitability for a dealership, and they drive loyalty for the dealerships and have people come back over time. So what we've seen across an aggregate of resources is that about 49% of dealership profits come from parts and service. Now, you all watching today will be able to look at this number and see how it benchmarks against your specific dealership. So you can plug in your profit percentage for your own dealership today. And we also see on average that people are 2 times more likely to purchase their next vehicle at the same dealership that they're getting service at. So this is really important as we're looking at bringing new customers in, retaining those customers for the next several years, even up to a decade, in our specific dealership. So loyalty is really at the heart of bringing these customers back to the dealership. So I want to dive now into how do we understand what the purchase journey looks like. So we've talked about what the industry opportunity is, and now we're going to dive specifically into what are people doing online and how do we reach them. So first, I'm going to take you through a real snapshot of a purchase process that one of my colleagues at Google went through and was willing to share with me. So they had a 2008 Ford Escape, and it needed standard maintenance. It had 115,000 miles, and specifically they needed to replace a spark plug. So I'm going to go through their journey here today with you. First, they started off on Google looking for spark plugs for the 2008 Ford Escape. They wanted to look for recommended spark plugs specifically for their trim. They then moved across Google and they started to look at other websites, advancedautoparts.com, fordparts.com, Amazon, etc., to look for the parts that they were interested in. They ended up searching on YouTube, how do they replace a spark plug for that specific vehicle, indicating that they might be wanting to be a DIY servicer. So they then moved over and were researching information on YouTube, found that they needed to get even further in the research process, went to Google, looked at spark plugs, found an AutoZone coupon, purchased from AutoZone. But that journey did not end there. What they actually found was that they had oil on their spark plugs. And so now what was turning into an intended DIY journey to replace that part is now moving back digital so that we can find more information. So now we need to understand through Google, what do you do when you have oil on a spark plug? How do you start to fix that? And to continue to move through that journey, we see that they head back to YouTube to look for educational videos on how to. Back to Google, looking for mechanics near me. This indicates the point where they said, I am not willing or qualified to have this service completed at home. And then ultimately, they moved into their local mechanic shop for service on their vehicle and their spark plug. So what this really illustrates is that there is, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of digital touch points, but it happens across different moments. And mindset can change very easily, especially when we're in the fixed op space, on whether I want to do this myself or I really need to take this into a dealership. So let's dive in specifically and look at what is actually influencing the decision-making process that we saw illustrated a minute ago. We know that search and video are the number 1 and 2 most used sources when we look across both online and offline sources. And again, this information is aggregated from not only Google information, but also other research out there. So we see that search engines influence 75% of the consideration, with video websites at 51%. Then that's followed by tire and parts retail websites, talking to family, friends, colleagues, discussing with a service advisor, and so on and so forth. So we can see really the mix here of online and offline touch points. Yeah.
Hey, Lissette, if I can, it's what's stark to me is look at the traditional media that, for so long, dominated this space, and look how low they rank now. Radio, magazines, and newspapers, flyers or brochures received in the mail and TV.
Yeah, and as you see here, it still has a place in the process, but by far and large, there's so much information available online today that is the first touch point, Ted, that people are going to, and then they might be reinforcing that through conversation. But really, and we saw that in the journey a minute ago, search engines, video websites, they're surfacing all of the information you need in that moment to make that decision. And so let's dive a little bit further into this as well. So when we look at search specifically, we know that it does a few things. It helps with discovering a purchase location. And that really is when we actually ask somebody, how are you discovering where you are taking your vehicle for service? Search engines are second only to a family or friend recommendation or word of mouth. And 41% of those people are discovering the service center online. So this really points back to digital being the first point of interest. Now, when we look earlier at the previous slides, when we were talking about how digital is so influential, yet there are fewer than who we would like to be moving into the dealerships within the fixed op space. This is why we want to make sure that we're discoverable. We want to make sure that they can find your dealership online at the moment that they're looking for it within parts and service. And so we're going to dive into how we can do that specifically in just a few minutes. So if we look specifically at tires, we see a few interesting behaviors. We actually see that most purchasers of tires are only going to shop at one physical store location. So they're going to do all of that research ahead of time, and then they're going to come into the store. So that could be the dealership, or that could be a mechanic store that might not be affiliated with your dealership. And they're finding that location through search engines, dealer and regional websites, and brand websites primarily. Now, what we also have found through our research is that even though they're coming in to shop one store, on average, they're willing to spend over $400 on that tire and within your dealership. So these are very high interest and profitable customers for your dealership to make sure that you're bringing into the store. And then let's look at YouTube. So we talked about search and YouTube, so we're going to dive into YouTube specifically. Over half of parts and service purchasers are watching online videos while researching. And really that's the #1 destination where they're looking for online videos about vehicle parts and service. So you can see over here to the right, Ted, you see YouTube, and then we look at other retail websites, vehicle manufacturer websites. So this is, again, where are people going to find the information they need? 51% of people are watching videos about their vehicle parts or service. This is a very vast landscape. There is a lot of content out there about how-to videos for parts and service, and people really are leaning in because they want to know, they want to understand. Even if they end up taking it to a dealership, they want to understand before they get there what is going to happen at the dealership. What parts and service do I really need based on any particular maintenance that we have?
And video really dominates. Look at that. Look at that statistic, 51%.
51%. You know, it's such an easy access point for them to understand the story, see how it's actually being done before they've ever stepped foot into the service lane. So this is interesting as well. So they're learning and understanding the repair needs, and we can break that down even further. So as you just mentioned, a lot of people are leaning into video. There are over 1 billion views on YouTube for DIY and maintenance content. And this is how we're seeing it break down specifically for parts and service. So we're seeing 51% of people are looking for DIY videos. So they're considering, can I do this myself? Other 33% are looking for general information, and they just want education. They just want to understand and learn. Maybe they're earlier in their research process. 23% are looking at videos from a specific service center or repair shop. So if you are a dealership and you have videos, whether that's how-to videos, videos talking about the value of your dealership and what you can do in the service lane, definitely bring that to the forefront, because people are interested in that content. They want to learn and they want to understand. And then 21% are looking at professional reviews. So this is a real opportunity for dealerships to get the word out about what they offer in the service lane, what you offer specifically for tires, and within all of your parts and service needs. This is going to continue to grow, we think, as we're seeing, this continued trend. Now, online video prompts parts and service purchasers to take action too. So we now know that they not only look at videos for information, but they're also taking action based on what they're learning. So they've talked to a friend, a family, or a colleague. They've looked for information online. So a video prompts them to take more online action. They've used their mobile device to find information. Mobile is very important, especially in the parts and service space. They've scheduled an appointment online or called their parts and service retailer, visited the retailer, and then perhaps they've realized that they've needed more than they had intended to buy and do the repairs themselves. So really the takeaway here is they're not only looking at video to understand, but they're looking at video to understand what action they need to take. Okay, so now I want to get specifically into what we're looking at for trends. So I mentioned this is a really great time to have this conversation. And so we're going to take a look back to understand how you can use digital right now, specifically around the tires landscape, but parts and service more holistically. So when we look back at the data all the way back to 2016, you can see here that there is a trend. And that trend is that search interest is spiking in winter months specifically, and that has increased over the past 3 years. So for tires, we're seeing spikes that are happening between October and December. And these trends, as you see here, are predictable year over year. And so as you're looking at how to further, your tire business, your parts and service business over the next few months, we lean on these historical trends to prepare for the current trends. For batteries, we see a little bit of a longer time between December and February. So right now it's really tire season. Batteries will pick up come December. And a fun fact for everybody here is that tires are actually the top searched fixed ops category that we at Google categorize. So the tire demand really is there. And we talked about, between YouTube and search, how it's being discovered online. So let's look into this a little bit more. So I mentioned tire demand starts in early October. It moves through December. And what we've seen over the past few years, that this is predictable, also around winter storms. And this makes sense if we take a step back and we think about when do people need new tires, when do they want to prepare. But you can see here in these trends that once these historical winter storms have hit, so has correlated tire search interest. And when we look at the entire US over to the right-hand side, we've looked at this by month, and you can see how the trends will change by region, by state, by month over time. So it also is important to understand where you are within the US regions. What does the weather look like for you? And that will also play a factor in making sure that you're present to capture the demand of the customers that are ready to come into your dealership. Okay, so we've talked about industry more holistically. We've talked about customer search trends and how they are, if we look at history, they tend to be more predictable. So how do we actually drive action and reach those audiences? So I want to talk a little bit about how Google does that with our network of Google Search, our Google Display Network, Maps, etc. So when people log in to Google, we are able to use those signals to understand what their intent is and what they're looking for online. So for example, if they search for 2015 Ford Explorer tires on google.com, as we saw in the other path, we can understand that they visited a site to look at winter tires. They're looking for local tire shops, etc. So we take all of that information and we're able to synthesize that so that you can advertise to the right person at the right time. Now, just to qualify what we're looking at in terms of tire customers right now, there are 60 million people currently researching tires in the month of October in the US. That's a lot of people. And as we saw, that's only going to continue for the next few months. So the question then is, great, how do I reach them? So what we want to do is make it as easy as possible for you to reach your audience and bring them into your service lane. So we do that through machine learning, and we can talk about this in a lot of detail if you want to reach out after the roundtable. We have different ways to do that. You can advertise through google.com and Maps so that they can find you within Google Maps. You can do that through YouTube. You can do that through display and search. So I've put together just kind of a three-pronged approach to help get started. And the first is to increase your brand tire coverage for this winter in particular, and use smart bidding. So what smart bidding does is it lets the machine algorithms analyze those signals from our different properties and ensure that when you are advertising on search, you are likely to bring in people into your store, or what we call store visits, so that people that are searching are likely to come into your dealership, which is what you want. You want them in there. You want to be able to convert them and change their tires, batteries, etc. We've seen, just for an example, Ted, that using smart bidding, we've seen an average of a 35% lift in conversions into the store based on this smart bidding. And the value here is that it takes out the need for dealers to have to predict when they should be present. They know when the trends are, and we can have the machine help us bring those into the showroom. The next then is for video. So reach your in-market parts and service audiences with YouTube video ads. And we have ads that have a specific call to action. So as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of people that are looking for information, so they can do that through the video, but then you can also prompt them to schedule service. So you can customize that to say, schedule an appointment, locate a service center, you can view service offers, and more. So that really is directly asking them to come and learn more and visit your dealership. And then the third piece I wanted to close with is using the Google Assistant. So as you mentioned, Ted, I was here last month. We were talking about Google Assistant in terms of fixed operations and the work that Paragon Honda has done in this space. But it really helps make scheduling your service appointments a more frictionless experience for customers.
Having a car in New York City can be really stressful.
Taxi cabs can be assertive drivers, perhaps.
Parking is definitely not the easiest thing. And also, cars break down and they require maintenance.
My grandfather founded Paragon Honda. I think that he would not be able to fathom how different the industry is today.
It used to be in the 1950s when they were delivering cars to the dealership, they'd be covered and people would be waiting outside to see the cars come to the dealership. And today, we've lost that magic. Time is the new currency. You've got to move at the speed of the customer. You've got to think like a customer. What do your customers want? They won't tolerate waiting for a service. In fact, the whole notion of having to come to a dealership for service is outdated. We decided perhaps if we could pick up the customer's cars, service the car, and return the cars back to the customer, that would be a great convenience to them.
In New York City, real estate moves really fast. So if I'm going to be out getting my car serviced for 4 hours, that could be really costly.
Paragon's looking for ways to do everything and anything that a customer would do at the dealership online. We're trying to figure out how can we assist those customers on their time. And in fact, we're trying to take that to the next level, which is to do it using voice technology.
Hey, Google, talk to Paragon Honda.
All right, getting Paragon Honda service.
This is Paragon Honda. Would you like to book an appointment for a car service?
Yes. The Google Assistant is the thing of the future, and it's going to help make my business so streamlined.
It becomes completely frictionless, completely seamless, and this was a great way for us to exceed the customer's expectations. You can't afford today to put an ad on television and hope that some people see it. We use Google's marketing tools to create incredible efficiency. Our normal cost of advertising to bring somebody in the dealership and to sell them a car is about $500. Now today, using Google store visits, we've seen that through AdWords, it's costing us $100 to sell an automobile. We think that we can distribute our services using Google to help us. And I think anytime you do what's best for the customer, that ends up being what's best for the business.
I can just say, hey, Google, schedule service at Paragon Honda, and I don't have to worry about it.
Just simplifies the whole process of owning a car in the city.
I think my grandfather would be very proud. He was always progressive in his time, and now we're staying progressive in our times.
Anything we can do to make it easier for them to schedule an appointment and walk into your dealership is the goal. And so really, that is where Google Assistant and Google is here to help more holistically. And then I just want to close and say, if you found any of this interesting and you want to learn more, because we're really only touching the surface, we have what we call our Google Dealer Guidebook. And you can download this today and really understand, how do I get started with Google if you haven't yet? And if you are using Google for a lot of these areas that we've talked about and you're ready to take the next step, it has that information as well. So you can go ahead and take a picture of this QR code, or we have a short link here where you can find and download the guidebook for further information, for questions, and then you can always reach out to me as well.
Lissette, Gole, easily one of the most insightful segments we have seen ever here at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, and extremely timely information for our audience as it relates to the basics, the tires, the batteries. And I know you've been working on this for some time to make sure that we had the most accurate information for right now. But this is simply amazing. And, the reach of some of these things, including video, just, astounds me.
The customers are there, Ted. So it's our job to just make sure that they are finding what they need and finding the dealership to go get the service done.
Everyone, you can reach Lissette. We've gone ahead and put her email up here on the screen. It's lgole@google.com. Lissette Gole is the head of automotive retail at Google. And also she's appearing in the virtual event program. You can reach her through there as well. And Lissette, thank you so much again. And we look forward to having you back at the Fixed Ops Roundtable, because the insights are just amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I look forward to coming back.
Welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable. I'm Gene Girdley along with Ted Ings. And next is another great panel moderated by our good friend, Ed Roberts.
That's right, Gene. A while back, Ed Roberts and I were talking about the upcoming Tire Summit, and we wanted to put together a panel on warranty. And we thought, who better than Steve Ryder over at Warranty Processing in Chicago to help us put together a panel of experts and to help lead the subject. So Ed, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Ed Roberts, everyone, the Fixed Ops Director at Bozard Ford Lincoln down in St. Augustine, Florida.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Ted. And I have a group of rock stars here today. And let me run through and introduce them real quick. I have Steve Ryder. He's owner and operator at Warranty Processing, Inc. I have Sean Kingery, Fixed Operations Director, Corporate Fixed Operations Director at Step One Automotive Group. David Henson, President of Warranty Matters. Tom Druzinski, Director of Service Operations at West Hare Automotive Group. Sarah Vantine, last but not least, Fixed and Variable BDC Director at Scott Clark Automotive Group. And it's great to be able to put together a warranty processing panel, because that is cash flow to the service department. And it is the biggest customer that we have in any of our service departments is our manufacturer. And that starts with obviously at write-up and proper documentation to get the ball rolling. And nobody better to tell us about that than Sarah Vantine.
Well, thank you so much, Ed. So really, to kick it all off, I mean, your appointment process is really how your service department is going to make sure that from the moment that you're inputting the information and booking that customer appointment, that's going to set the stage for the rest of the process. And especially in appointments, it's very important to make sure that your scheduler that you have is utilized correctly. With our store, so we use Xtime for our appointment scheduling software. Xtime actually goes all the way through into the lane and the shop process. And so from the back end side of our scheduler, we input every single opcode identical to how we have it in our DMS. And that's a critical component for the warranty processing part, because you want to make sure that you're utilizing the right opcodes for the right service that the customer is coming in for. So with our BDC, it's important to train them on just how to think about that appointment when a customer is calling in. And, a perfect example is something like recalls. With the manufacturers, there are so many very specific nuances with how those recalls have to be performed. In many cases, there's very specific technicians that have to perform those recalls. And so it's important when you're going through the setup process to mirror the same expectations that the manufacturer has with how you're inputting those opcodes and how you're structuring your scheduler. So for our stores, what we do is we structure it based on the shop capacity, and instead of just booking the appointment by the advisor. So when a customer calls in and we recognize that they have an open recall, maybe they have a tire concern, maybe whatever the nature of the concern is, if there's potentially a warranty element with it, we want to make sure that our team utilizes that correct opcode and then books it in the appropriate capacity. What that's going to do is then it's going to set up the right expectation for the service advisor. When the advisor goes and pulls that appointment over, all of those opcodes are already preloaded. So they can go ahead and spot check that. There's not a whole lot of work where the advisor has to go back and then make the corrections to that appointment. And so that's an important step to help the advisor, get through that piece of it. And then it just sets up the rest of the process when it comes to writing up the customer and then the technician doing their part.
Absolutely. And service is all about having the right structure in place. When the right structure is in place, it allows you to follow through with the right process. If you start missing some of those elements, that's when cash flow becomes a key in processing warranty. So thank you for your time, Sarah. I may circle back to you here in a few minutes, but I want to bring Tom on and talk about 3 C's, because that is ultimately key to making sure that we provide the manufacturer with all the information that they want to see, what caused it, what can we do to prevent it from happening again, and then some of the other elements that goes along with that. Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. 100% correct. I mean, you spend a lot of time bringing that money in and making sure that you can process that warranty. But I've been lucky enough to have been through audits on the dealer side with many different major manufacturers. And I can tell you that every time they're going to find something. So making sure that you have a tight process. If you're not the one inspecting your warranty repair paperwork every day, somebody outside of yourself that's looking at it. The biggest things, again, 3 C's, like you said, that claim, those auditors, when they come in, that claim has to be able to stand on its own. So they need to be able to take your paperwork, read it from top to bottom, and have an understanding of exactly what's happening. Did your advisor get the right information from the customer? Did they just, list it, customer states there's a noise? Do they even have the customer states line on the repair order or the proper verbiage for that manufacturer? So making sure that you or you have somebody assigned to go through that paperwork and just do spot checks. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the phrase inspect what you expect. You have these processes laid down, and you can't just say, okay, they're running and think that they're perfect, because like I said, those manufacturers, they're going to find something in every case when they send that audit team in. So that claim has to be able to stand on its own, clear customer complaint. Your technician stories have to be on point. What did they do? What did they test? What were the readings? Making sure that they're not rubber stamping the readings. We had a manufacturer that one of the things that they looked at was a particular repair. We were heavy on a replacement versus a repair. And the readings all were measuring the same. They were showing the same reading. So it triggered a red flag with them. Turns out that when that pipe is plugged, that's the pressure reading you're going to get every time. But it just goes to show that the manufacturers are taking deeper looks into your data. They know if it's the same reading every time. They know if you're just rubber stamping that repair to get the extra couple of tenths. So making sure as a manager that you're taking a look as well, and you know what's going through there. So what tests were done, and then ultimately what was the repair? What exactly did you do? Specific with wiring diagrams, documents, all of the different things now that you're required to have printed out and attached to repair orders. Are they all there? Are the signatures there? One-time use components. Right now, every manufacturer has their own, sort of thing that they're looking for, and those one-time use components, the bolts. You got to take a cab off of a Ford. All of the bolts get replaced. Everything gets replaced. Steering lock nuts. Most manufacturers now, it's a one-time use component. If it's not there, well, they're gonna find it. And finally, when you're going through that process, one of the other easier things to check that's big on their list is the clock time, the punch time for your technicians. Are they clocked on when they said they were working on the vehicle? Did they clock off when they were done? Did they run W time? Did they run or Z time? Whatever your manufacturer requires. Is there a separate punch, and is that punch documented? You know, every single one of those time punches, you should know what they were doing from this time to this time. You know, that should be firmly documented on your paperwork. And minor things to check for. Spend a couple of minutes a week to pull 20 repair orders. Go through them with a magnifying glass. Save yourself a ton of money in the long run.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that the manufacturer looks for when they're doing an off-site audit or on-site is the overlapping clock times. Is the technician working on multiple vehicles at the same time and that kind of stuff. And you mentioned earlier on about being lucky enough to go through some audits. I'm not sure if that's a lucky thing or not. I'm not sure how many people in our audience will think that's very lucky.
That's amazing. The lottery systems that they use, that you just happen to win the lottery from time to time with some of those.
Right. But all of what we're talking about is great process that drives good CP as well. And CP is non-chargeable. And that's constant cash flow. So when you do the right things here, it drives to the other. But the lucky enough for an audit, that kind of drives right into our next guest. And David helps a lot of dealers with dealers that are about to go into an audit, just came out of one and want to prevent from going into another. David, tell us a little bit about what a dealer goes through going through an audit.
Well, thank you, Ed. Again, it's pretty much as Tom said here. They're looking at anything and everything. It's going to take up a lot of your time. It's going to take a lot of your resources because it's all hands on deck. Pulling files, reprinting in case if you scan, for example. But as of right now, what they're doing, most manufacturers, because of the COVID pandemic, most manufacturers are limiting the travel of their auditors. So they're doing what I refer to as electronic audits, having dealers scan repair orders and send them in. There are various levels of this. Some of these manufacturers are still, it's like a full-blown audit. They're asking for 100 VIN folders. That takes some time to just get together. Some others are just doing a 15 to 18 claims at a time. That's pretty simple. But in every case, what I see, these are not low-level audits. Everything's on the table. As Tom said, it's just like they were in your store to begin with. But in every case, when you're doing these electronic audits, you have an opportunity to look at these claims before you send them in. And unfortunately, I see some dealers that just put them together and upload them and without giving it another thought. And that's always going to result in chargebacks. Like Tom said, they're going to find something. Nobody's perfect, but you can minimize your exposure. So before you upload these to anybody, get together with a service manager, warranty administrator, and go over them for compliance, because again, everything's on the table. Make sure they're legible. I see this so often, people just scan and like it's a mindless process, but it cut off the signature, a customer signature. You left a sticky note on covering up an approval or something of that nature, some important information. So make sure they're legible, make sure your signatures and approvals are in place. A dark highlighter will sometimes make something illegible. So I encourage people to only use a yellow highlighter in the warranty office. Take away your blue and your greens. They don't copy well, they don't scan well. Make sure you have all your documents there. If you had to do an alignment, you got to have the alignment printout. If you transmission R&R, steering gear, whatever the case may be, you've still got to have the alignment sheet if you're going to claim the time for doing that. If you don't, they're subject to say, well, this is improper repair. You didn't align it after you didn't reset the toe. So make sure you've got that printout. Any diagnostic trouble code printouts that are required, they've got to be there right along with it with everything that is as if they were in your store to begin with. Ensure all the dates and times coincide with the repair. That's getting into what Tom was talking about, your sublet invoices. I've seen those dated 3 or 4 days before the RO was even open. That's going to be a problem. So make sure all that matches up, or you got an explanation of why it doesn't. If there was a bulletin that applied at that particular time and that particular repair, it needs to be there because bulletins change, repair processes change. So if you had technical assistance involved, you need to make sure that note is on there that they told you to do something, because these auditors have a means of going and see, is that really what tax said to do? Do they say to make this repair? And finally, to wrap my end up here, it's not just these. You're being audited every day, whether it's a warranty part return or just the people looking at your claims applying wholesale approval. they're looking at your claims, they're looking at them for compliance. So you're being audited from every angle, every day, whether you know it or not.
Absolutely. And stay with me just a minute there, David. I got a couple of questions for you. So since COVID, you said that they're doing a lot of remote audits. Was that something that was not being done prior to COVID? Was it on site mostly?
Most were, yes. For example, GM had started doing a couple of years ago, but they were just at small samples. In June of this year, they sent out 400 electronic audits. They call them MOREs, mail out reviews. Just last month, they sent out another 400. So, and it's taken them several months. These are the corporate auditors that are looking at this. It's not your regional people. So they are taking these things and printing them out and issuing debits. They will call you back and tell you what's going on, send you it's a full-blown audit report. In GM's case, it's only 12 to 18 claims. Some of these other manufacturers are, I had a Nissan dealer earlier this year. They got hit for $35,000. So the money's out there, the money's on the table, and they'll take it.
Right. And one of the first things they're going to look at is comebacks. That you charge them for multiple repairs on the same issue. That's one of the first things that highlights it to them. Appreciate your insight there, David. Bring a wealth of knowledge to us. I'm going to shift over to Sean a little bit, and I think Sean's got a little bit of a story. We all have warranty administrators when we do warranty in-house, and they got vacation, they got to do other things, but in those elements, we still have to have that cash flow. Still got to keep coming through the door. We still have to process it because a lot of times we had days that were numbered or held to get stuff handled, stuff paid. And I think Sean went through some personnel issues where he had to work through it. And tell us a little bit about that, Sean.
Sure. Thanks, Ed. So for us, we're a group in 3 years that grew from 4 stores to 14 stores. And in that time, like we find in my 25 plus years of doing this, the warranty administrators forget who they work for. They forget they work for us and not for the manufacturers. And it became such a big deal in our group that we weren't getting claims paid. They would sit in RA status for approval. I started talking to Peter at WPI probably weeks leading into it. Literally how the whole thing rolled out was I called Peter on a Friday and said, hey, I'm going to make a business decision here and we're going to change. Peter agreed that he would fly in on Sunday. Then a person named Steven, who might be on the screen right now, COVID kicked off that weekend. Literally, they couldn't travel. So we went from going from an in-house warranty administrator who had a crew of 3 with her over 14 stores to on Monday, remotely launching WPI, literally, without a flaw. We do a warranty review. We call it the 5 no's. One of the no's is warranty. We do it every Thursday. Peter and I go over the schedule every Tuesday. We've been doing it all morning today. And I'm under 2% receivable as a group. And literally, if you want every hiccup that should have happened, Peter couldn't fly. We didn't have the scanners in place because we were going to do that on Monday. We didn't miss a beat. We didn't miss receivables. Cash flow is everything. And I'm not just saying this because this is a WPI panel. I could not and I would not go backwards. And trust me, when I tell you I had the service managers in the group who are the old school, oh, I need my person in-house, I need this. There is not a manager in my group that would go backwards at this point for any price, any dollar amount.
So I didn't know that she was the warranty administrator for all 14 stores. So
yeah, she oversaw it because as we grew, she came with the group that we purchased originally, the original 4 stores, and I had her overseeing the group. And ultimately, as we acquired other stores, the other employees started working for her. Right. And those employees are, other than the warranty administrator herself, are still employed. They're doing the scanning and the checking and the corrections. And again, I can go down the list of what, the 3 C's, the stories, the times, the comments, the missing alignment specs, stuff like that WPI requires. They're still doing that. But no, she was over the whole group.
And with moving out to an outside source, you don't have the personnel issue and any of that kind of stuff. No, I'm pretty certain you probably hadn't written Steven up for not getting warranty processed, right?
Yes, correct. Yes, we're not there yet.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
Of course.
That brings me to Steven. Steve, owner and operator, Warranty Processing, Inc. I've known you now for a couple of years and heard nothing but similar stories to what Sean tells us this morning. And tell us a little bit about what you do and just tell us who you are and what you do and how you can help.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Sean, for the plug there. I mean, we really appreciate you as a customer, and we're always going to do our best to take care of you as well. Yeah, we process warranty claims for about 285 rooftops right now. Have helped thousands of dealers, of course, over 5 decades that we've been processing warranty claims here. We handle 14 different DMS systems and 23 different manufacturers. So we've added a lot over the years. We, we kind of consider ourselves not just claims processors, but we also do consulting work as well. Mainly, like when we set up the dealership, prior to COVID, and of course we'll go back to it again once we get rolling. We establish relationships with the whole dealership. We'll work with your technicians, your service advisors, the managers, office personnel, everybody that needs to be involved, because the money, as stated by everybody else here, is people don't realize how much money is driven through warranty. And we work with consulting, not only just setting up the dealership, but also through our comprehensive reports. As we're processing the claims, we'll send you reports on the claims that are missing things, and it's not just the dealership in general. It will be you'll be able to focus down on the particular employee. So like if you have a technician who might be weak at time punches or not filling out a diagnostic repair properly, not giving the proper documentation, anything like that, you're going to be able to pinpoint who that individual is. The same thing with your advisors. You'll be able to find out, where people are missing signatures and be able to coach them into doing a better job for your dealership. And this is really important, of course, to everybody. But, there's, we're all human right now, and especially during the COVID times, I've seen so many changes in like help, because there's people going out and getting tested, leaving the staff short on help. So naturally, the people that are writing up the claims and even wrenching, you're shorthanded. So it's more likely they're going to rush through things and miss things because they're trying to help the customer and get them out the door. So we have seen somewhat of an increase in some of our dealerships, and we just got to be that much sharper to be on top of it and help them out as well.
Agreed. And I want to talk about this a little bit, because this kind of ties into what the roundtable meeting is. This is roundtable number 8, and it's the Tire Summit. And the tires are probably the biggest retention pool in the service industry. But also, more so than that, we kind of own that customer up until the end of that warranty period, because they're going to come back to you to get that stuff handled, and they really have that choice after that. And when that warranty period is up is about the time they need tires. But it's also through that warranty period that if you got a dealer that is struggling with processing warranty, and they're telling a customer that they can't do that under warranty for them, that's also something that's kind of minimizing the retention there as well. Do you have a contact person at each dealer that you go back to, or how does that work when you're missing information? I know you said you do a report so you can narrow down who those people are, but how do you resolve that to go ahead and close that claim?
Sure, Ed, that's a great question. We use like a fresh desk service where we send the information to the specific person, whether it's the manager, the writer. It's different in every dealership, okay? Because there's the smaller dealerships, you might have the manager handling everything. Or you could have the ones that are larger that are going to have the advisor be responsible for each thing he writes. And then we CC the manager on it so they can see what's going on. We get the information if they're missing something for the ones before we can get the claim paid. And, there's also, there's times when they shouldn't have wrote the warranty claim. Maybe it's not a warranty claim, and maybe they just messed up, or they, like I say, people make mistakes. Well, we send it back. We give them that information. We're able to track everything they send to us. And it's, like I said, it's a very diverse group of dealerships that we work with. Some of them are doing a great job as far as collecting the information. They're right on top of the techs, the advisors. They have a wonderful training program in place, and they just want to get the claims paid, and they're having trouble doing that. And then we have other levels of, everything from the smaller shop to the medium one, where they might need a little more assistance and consulting. They might need, help with training more of their technicians or their advisors or whatever. And as you know, some of the smaller stores, it's hard to get, different levels of help in there. And you got to take what you can get. Just find the person that's ambitious enough and wants to learn and we help them learn that process.
So we talked about quite a few things today. We talked about proper write-up. We talked about the 3 C's, clock time, had a success story, talked about some obstacles with audits. Let's talk about audits a little bit. Some dealers, you go into an audit or some manufacturers, you go into an audit from a performance standpoint, and some as a lottery. What kind of support do you offer a dealer when they're going through an audit, when they're chosen for an audit?
Yeah, thanks, Ed. What we usually do is, like, if it's a mail-in audit, electronic audit, as Dave calls it, we'll have them send that information to us so we can take another look at it and let them know that there's, they might be missing something. Because, quite often, honestly, the documentation is there somewhere. They just don't have it attached to the ticket. They don't know enough to go find it out of the file, whatever, and send it over to them. And we'll give them a good idea. Like everybody in this in our panel here has been saying, it's so important that everybody is responsible for doing their part of it, because sometimes, as you guys have all experienced, it could be too late sometimes. If you haven't done what you were supposed to do, but at least you've done it. You got a heads up. You know what's going to happen. You can go, tap that guy on the head or whatever and say, hey, look, man, you missed something here, and we can't be doing that. It's going to cost me, because it's never the $300 claims that they're looking for, right? I mean, it's usually the $5,000 and $6,000, sometimes $10,000 claims. They just don't want to pay them, and they're going to look for a way that they don't have to if you miss something, So we're just trying to do the best we can to avoid chargeback situations and make sure that the relationship between the manufacturer and the dealership is strong, and everybody gets what they have coming to them honestly.
Truly, warranty is like insurance. They're going to look for reasons not pay it, if you've missed something or whatever. But really, we're dancing with their set of rules. And if we don't follow their rules, then they don't have to write us the check. So I totally get it. And obviously, they want to look at the one that will make more of an impact to them. You mentioned that you service 285 rooftops. And so sometimes the manager handles everything at a smaller store. Sometimes that kind of constrains the store a bit. Tell us how that works and how your process works with a bigger store. Can you handle that large store? Can you handle that store that's got 50 techs in it and have to deal with 5 different people there at that store?
Yeah, sure, Ed. Yeah, that's that's a good question. We're like really work with a device set of individuals, and the smaller dealerships, like I said before, we're requiring more like hands-on type of help. Will take a lot more time, and that of course takes time away from our staff. And we're always looking for good people. We're training people, and as far as and our retention has been very strong this year. So with the COVID, it's slowed down to the point where, as far as the volume of warranty claims that come into WPI right now, we're sitting right about a 30% less than what we were a year ago before the COVID came around. So I'd say probably most of our dealerships are it's really kind of hard to say. I'd say probably about 25% of them are larger stores, and then maybe a half of them might be a medium type of store, and a lot of them are part of the dealer groups, specifically the medium sized ones. And then of course there's still some of those smaller stores in the smaller towns that exist, and even those ones have been going to dealer groups now as well. So right. We talk to a lot of people. We work really hard, and I got a great staff here. I mean, they're just amazing what they do for our customers.
Absolutely. But yes, 285 stores, they have to be. Now, last question I have for you. We talked quite a bit about audits as well, and you're helping dealers that's going into them, coming out of them, probably picked up just as they completed one. What do you see maybe the number 1 or number 2 reasons of chargebacks in an audit?
Well, that's really depends on the manufacturer. After they get done with the audit, they'll send back the findings to us. We'll review the audit, and then if there's something there that we feel that they should fight, we'll go through that with them and on their behalf. And we do quite well in that, quite honestly. All the different manufacturers. I mean, a lot of the things that you folks have been mentioning here are hitting it. The one-use parts. The time signatures, one of our manufacturers is going through a lot of engine repairs, and they're like really like looking for the, you know, dotting the I's and crossing the T's on that stuff, and they're charging them back, you know. And then we have an opportunity, if we can prove that we have some of these things that they're looking for, we can go back and get them paid again.
Yes, he's right about that. If you don't use all the correct components, they can charge you back for it.
Gene, it seems that we learn something every single roundtable, every single panel. So much knowledge here. I want to thank the subject matter experts, Sarah, Tom, Sean, Stephen, David, and of course, our good friend, Ed Roberts. Thank you so much, everybody. And everyone, you can learn more about warranty processing at their website, paidwarranty.com. And you can reach out to Stephen directly. His email and phone number are here on the screen. Also, in the virtual event program, you'll be able to find his information that links back to him, as well as all the panelists who are here with us today.
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Ted. Appreciate you guys having us on. I think it was an impactful meeting.
It was.
Thanks, everybody. Well, Ted, what a great group that was with the warranty processing panel there. And now a great friend of the roundtable who's also brought a special guest with him.
That's right, Gene. I did enjoy that panel as well. And with us now is a great friend of the roundtable. UpdatePriomise has been with us since the very beginning, Gene, back in Los Angeles in September of 2019. We want to welcome back to the Fixed Ops Roundtable, Brandon Nixon, the National Director of Sales at UpdatePriomise. Brandon, welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Hey guys, how are you? Thank you guys for having us here today.
Great to see you. Great to have you back. And also we want to welcome to the roundtable Ruben Cerna, who's the Parts and Service Director at Rock Honda. Ruben, welcome to the Fixed Ops Roundtable.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here.
Great. You know, Brandon, your company's really leading the pace in the industry on the technology side and doing some amazing things. So I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity for you to tell us a little bit about what's going on and some of the successes you're having. And I know certainly the dealers at the roundtable are experiencing it. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the time. Thank you, of course, having us on here again. You know, we've had a lot of success over the past couple of years, and as you guys have seen, the expansion's been, you know, phenomenal for us. So, but you know, this session we figured after the past couple roundtables, you know, there's a lot of great products and great companies coming on here. So we kind of wanted to switch it up, and you know, we figured, what do the dealers want to hear about? They don't want to just hear about companies and products, right? They want to hear from real dealers. So I asked Ruben Cerna, the Parts Service Director at Rock Honda, to jump on, share some of his best practices. He's been a long-standing client with us for a long time. I would say a personal friend as well, but he's one of the best in the industry. And I figured, hey, let's bring him on, see what he can provide, and you know, give some feedback there. So welcome, Ruben.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I don't know if I'm one of the best. I fail a lot and I just keep going. So,
that's part of what makes you the best, right? We always say failure is what's going to get you there. So I appreciate
the right mistakes.
Hey, Ruben, for those in the audience who don't know, where is Rock Honda located?
Rock Honda is located in Fontana, California, just east of Los Angeles, down to 210, and we're the 15 meet.
I was going to say Ruben's store is like the flagship for Honda, and you know, they definitely set the bar. So I figured, hey, let's bring him on. Let's see what he's got to say. His team's a great use of UpdatePriomise, and you know, he's got a lot to share from a management perspective, how he's addressed some of the success he's had in his store. So Ruben, actually, I just wanted to, you know, flip over to you and ask you, we're at the Tire Summit, but last session I had gone through a good amount of key points that, you know, managers had and should be taking advantage of in their stores. And I, you know, got a lot of those from you. So I figured we'd talk about some of those, but just wanted to hear from you, you know, what are some of the best practices you're seeing in your store? What's made you so successful? What are some of those failures you're talking about that got you to the top? And
well, you know, thanks for even mentioning some of the things that we were doing here. And I think I prefaced this whole thing. I'm not an expert. I believe that we're only as good as our people, and as good as our training, as good as our processes. And I always like to think of, you know, you've got to either create or copy some of the process to help you manage your people in the daily environment. So what I think one of the key things that we did here at Rock Honda is really got serious about Express.
Yep.
we have 14 express technicians. All our service advisors ride express, so it just doesn't funnel into one tunnel and get bottlenecked. But I think the express is the best way to grow your business. It's what our guests want. They want to be quick. They want to be upsold everything. You want to do a good, thorough multi-point inspection, and you have to have a manager inside the shop to actually manage all those 14 technicians. That's an express manager. So we've built express, and I think the most important thing when I first started it out was finding the right technician in the shop who did the best multi-point inspection, who flagged the most hours, who always did the things right, who was most knowledgeable, and had the best attitude. I made him my express manager 7 years ago. Now, he's not my shop foreman, but he was my express manager, and he taught everybody the right way to do a multi-point inspection. So the whole idea of like, oh, I just want new cars to go in express because you're not gonna be able to find anything. Well, not if you're doing the multi-point inspection right. Now you've got 14 people operating the same way this guy did, and so you're leveraging that. So the more you earn, the more you learn, the more you earn. So I think that was one of the best things that we did, and I didn't do that myself. I borrowed his knowledge and his expertise because he was the best at it. So I challenge fixed ops directors out there to really get serious with express because it really helps a lot.
What would be your advice for a manager who's out there trying to implement a process such as like a walk around? What have you seen that's been successful? Where have you failed with that? What kind of advice can you bring?
I think one of the mistakes that I made was, and it probably holds true with a lot of managers out there or professionals, is you set a process in place and you say, okay, this is what we want to do. I want to do the walk around. I want to do it with the guest. I want to welcome them. I want to ask them, or I want to thank them right when they come in. I had to get, when I worked with Toyota, I had just started there as a service director, and I wanted to show the advisors how to properly do a walk around. So I was right in service. And I walked up to a customer and I said, good morning. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate the business. My name is Ruben. How can we help you today? And he said, what did you say to me? And I'm like, oh God, I'm getting punched in the mouth first thing in the morning, right? And I said, good morning. Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate the business. My name is Ruben. How can I help you today? He said, I've been coming here 20 years and no one has ever thanked me just for coming in. And I'm like, and that, that was so powerful for me. It was real passionate. And he wasn't just saying it just to say it, because it really bothered him. When you invite people over to your house for a barbecue and they knock on your door and you open the door, hey, thank you so much for coming. Well, this is our house. This is our barbecue. Invite, say thank you so much they got a lot of choices. So what are you doing differently to separate yourself from everybody else? Because everybody's doing just the minimum amount. I think that as managers, we get so busy being in our office and doing reports that we forget, if you drill down into every facet of the service cycle, you're going to find so many things have gone wrong that you don't realize it because you're not inserting yourself into those processes.
What have you used, whether it's technologies, processes, reports, to hold your team accountable so you know that they are following those processes?
Well, I think our job as professionals is to give our team the best opportunity to provide the best possible customer experience, not only by how they behave, but also by what the tools that they have and that we make them available to them. So I've talked about creating processes to help you manage your people, but it also stands to, it's proven that if I have the right technology to help, I would say like UpdatePriomise. I use it. We've been using it, 5-6 years now?
Yeah.
I wouldn't run my business without it because it takes a C- advisor and it forces them to be at least an A- advisor because you have all these checks and balances. So if you create this, not only processes, but you have the technology that they have to use and it makes them better, that's when you're on the right track. So, having the multi-point inspection that's electronic, that's integrated, that's seamless, you can do video, you can do pictures, that you can text the guest and say, your car is done. Or, you know what, Mr. Smith, I know I promised you electronically that the car will be done by 2:00. And if you get a reminder and saying, hey, this car is 50% done, it hasn't even started. Oh, wow. Right? Because that's the biggest thing. How many times do I get phone calls? Not very often, but we used to get a lot of, status calls. Well, my advisors don't spend a whole lot of time on the phone because they're texting or sending an email. and they're making upsells through it too. It's easy. Everybody, this day and age, no one who picks up the phone. Like, who leaves a voicemail anymore, right?
Yeah.
It's texting. Just don't text while you're driving, okay, people. So that technology to be able to offer that to your employees not only allows them to make sure you have a fail-safe process in place so they can offer trouble-free experiences to all our guests, and it's consistent every single time. So
Ruben, what I'm getting out of that is that the technology helps enforce that consistency, not only for the advisors and the techs, yet it provides that consistency to the customer as well, that consistent experience each and every time, every guest.
Yes. And the beautiful thing about UpdatePriomise is that, what you focus on grows, right? So if you have to focus on upsells, or if you have to focus on follow-ups, if you need to focus on deferred campaigns, if you need to focus on recalls, they can build that stuff for you. They can cater it to exactly what you want. If your CSI is in the dumps, well, what's happening is most people who are upset are going to fill out the survey. And people who had a good experience, it was good, but I really don't have a lot to say. But if you get them, send them a text or a message, or deliver it right, and we can go over that. But those are the kind of things that help get the results that you want, the right results, not the wrong ones. And UpdatePriomise is pretty damn good at doing that. So,
Ruben, I appreciate the kudos, but I'm a strong believer that products are just products; they're tools out there, and without the right individuals behind it, such as managers like yourself, you're not going to get the results out of them that you need. And we see that. To be very honest, we see that around the nation, and it kind of leads into the last thing I'd like to review with you, which would be staff and management. Especially with COVID. And how that's taken a little bit of a shift in the industry, although we see, our service departments are doing the highest growth that they've ever seen, right? How have you, with that, how's that affected your business? What have you done with your staff to affect and make those changes so that you are still grossing a good amount and running an effective shop?
Because of COVID, in March, I had to lay off almost over half of my people. And with the business just wasn't there. So we couldn't sustain it. And as a manager, as a leader, and I was treated like I'm a parts and service director, but I'm also the owner. And you've got to figure out a way to be able to take what you have and offer still the same experience, even though it wasn't possible. Our CSE has in the last 8 years that I've been here, we've been good for 7 years in a row. The last 4 months, we've been tanking. Just terrible. Because we've just been responding. We've been reacting. We're not being proactive. So finally, and what it's allowed me to do is, I shouldn't say reduce my capacity, but you know how many phone calls and appointments I've taken? You know how many cars I've written? How many cars I've actually washed or parked? And so as a side effect, that's called, it's caused some good results because you've been able to drill down and relearn some of the things that you expected, that you thought you had some right processes in place, but then you thought, well, this worked maybe last year, but it's not working now.
Yeah.
And it forced me to do those things. We went from having 5 BDC reps to none. And then I just rehired 3 people, but I also figured out those 5 BDC reps were only making about 55 to 65 appointments. Myself, my guest relations manager, and my advisors alone were making 80 appointments because the business was there. Now, I also found out that when you send out a campaign through UpdatePriomise, you better be ready because the phones are going to go up. They're just going to go nuts. And now I know only do it at a certain amount of time with a certain amount of customers, because I just send them all, just do it. And it's a proven method. It works. So you've got that in your back. So you're taking some of these tools and drilled down as well and said, okay, this works. And I've got to be staffed for it. So in the last 4 or 5 months, we've actually been fortunate to net, pretty close to 20% in service and almost 40% in parts still. This month, last year, we did $620,000 in total parts and service growth. We're tracking $720,000, $100,000 more. And we finally have, we're at 90, almost 94% in CSE because we have the staff now. But it's really important. I mean, you've got to have the right staff, the right people in the right places, in the right seats. And I've been able to, in this last process, change my interview process. I don't just ask questions. What I do now is I role play. I said, okay, Brandon, if I was interviewing, I said, Brandon, you start today. Okay, you've written service before. I want to tell me, I'm your first customer. Tell me what you tell me. You're meeting me on the drive. I go over the 4 or 5 phases of the service cycle, and I say, I'm on the drive, I'm in my car. Tell me what you say. And I let it play out. Yep. And if I hear at least 70% of what I want to hear, I make a decision. Yep. Or I don't make a decision. And then also I'm thinking, some of these people that I've already hired, if I had to re-interview them, would I rehire them? And if I wouldn't rehire them, is it my fault? Did I not do the right things to make sure that I trained them properly? Or maybe my training method isn't where it needs to be. So those are the kind of things that during this whole COVID-19 pandemic has caused me to reevaluate some of the processes I had in place, make them better. And not only that, but it's, all the best ideas don't have to be mine.
Yeah.
So, Picasso used to say, good artists copy, great artists steal. So steal it if you have to.
Right. So. Ruben Cerna from Rock Honda and Brandon Nixon from UpdatePriomise here today at the Fixed Ops Roundtable. Both Ruben and Brandon are going to be available after this segment in the chat. So please feel free to chat up Brandon and Ruben as well. And Brandon, you got a lot of great things happening at your company. Ruben, amazing to hear about the success you're having. And we can all relate to what you've got going on there in this post-COVID era. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you. Appreciate you having us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate the time.